Okay, I've got preparing to stream. The YouTube feed is live. Like that, so I don't have to see it. Is everyone ready to go?
Yep.
All right, I call to order the May 11, 2020 meeting of the Signal Mountain Town Council. It's another electronic meeting. We'll begin with the pledge. You know what? Sam is doing the flag. Everyone look towards the flag that's in your room, and we will say our pledge together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States,
United States of America,
and to the republic
which stands
under God,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
and justice for
justice for all.
observe a moment of silence now. All right, thank you. And we join people all across the country dealing with those awkward moments that don't work as well in Zoom meetings. It has been asked, why are we not standing? And if you think about the position of the cameras and what you would be staring at if we all stood at the same time, you could figure out why we're not all standing during that portion. Okay. Let's get back over to the agenda.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
could you check the stream?
The stream?
I got a text that says there doesn't think it's streaming.
It's streaming. I'm watching it on YouTube.
Okay.
Carol, will you do roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Vice Mayor Amy Speak is not present. Councilmember Cheryl Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch.
Here.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Here. If someone else wants to check your phone just to make sure I don't have an anomaly to see if we're streaming, but I'm seeing it. And it's showing as being public. Can you verify that? Anybody?
Checking it.
Okay. Dick Graham just texted and says it is, so we're good.
And I just got a message from Sam saying he doesn't think it is.
Yeah, we started late, so he was probably looking for it, but it is now. We've seen it from two different places, so maybe it's not streaming in Nashville for some reason. Okay, we have minutes to approve. These are minutes from the April 13 meeting and the April 27 meeting. I remember, yeah. Entertain a motion when someone is ready for that.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? Any changes? Carol, will you take a roll call vote for approval?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham.
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch.
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. All right, now we have citizens' opportunity to address council, and we have one person who wants to address council, so we're going to call now. Did everyone hear that ringing?
Hello?
Hi, Claire, this is Dan, and we're in the town council meeting. So state your name and address and it's your opportunity to address council.
Okay, number 40 Carriage Hill. And I wanted to talk on the water meters. I understand from Adam that a water meter purchase recommendation is going to be made today for the AMR meters that can be upgraded to AMI. And I emailed all y'all as the water board and the council concerns and some comments and questions that I would ask you to discuss as the water board before you vote on spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on these meters. I'm not asking y'all for answers from individual water board meters, but there are a lot of questions I think customers should have answers to. I'd like to know what the installation costs will be, why we're paying for meters now that can be upgraded from AMR to AMI, but we're not looking at upgrading them for 15 to 20 years, according to town staff. And that is long after these meters will be out of warranty. And it's expensive to upgrade, and technology changes every year. So I just wonder why we're buying AMR meters with today's technology, but plan on upgrading to AMI in 15 to 20 years, maybe. I mean, what's the technology going to look like then? And I would like to know why we don't do a prompt study to find out what areas the AMI meters are going to cover. So if the town's going to use AMR meters for 15 to 20 years, maybe we ought to just look at the cost of AMR meters that can't be upgraded. I mean, we don't have to accept any of these bids. So this morning, I found out that Hickson Utility and WRUD are also buying new meters. So I can Signal Mountain talk to them and see if something can be worked out that would lower the meter cost and the unknown installation costs if, say, all three utilities bought the same meters. And the reason I'm asking that is back in December of 2014, a resolution was passed. It was 2014-69, I believe. And that authorized the town staff to upgrade our system and to purchase almost 3,500 meters. And it said in that resolution that they would want to purchase them because they'd be compatible with WRUD's meters. And it said the town would add our order to the Hickson Utility meter order to get a better price. Apparently they were buying meters. Of course, that purchase didn't happen. I don't know anything about that, why it didn't happen. But it looks like now we have the opportunity again to maybe go up to utilities and buy compatible meters at a better price. So would the water board be interested in looking into this? And last of all, I would like to ask the water board to maybe look at a loan through the SRF loan program that so many utilities use, or at least discuss getting on their list. So I would like the water board council to meet and take a good hard look at this meter purchase just before you vote on it. I appreciate your time. And I am not criticizing anybody, including town staff. I just would like to know, as a water customer, whose money you're spending, that the water board council has discussed the questions and comments and stuff that I sent, because I would, am quite concerned about buying these meters, and the little bit that I know about it, I just think that we need to slow down and answer some of these questions and look at some of this.
All right.
So that email I sent y'all has a lot of that in it that I said, I wasn't going to go over in my 3 minutes. I certainly don't expect any answers from any individuals.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, and appreciate your concerns. And if some of those don't get answered in the course, today's a discussion. It's not a vote to purchase. There's nothing on the agenda that would purchase anything. So as this goes forward, some of your questions may get answered. So we can talk after that. So
Sure.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Claire.
We move right into resolutions. This is a resolution. This is the, I'm having to scroll up and down. So this is the PPE for the fire department, correct?
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
A resolution authorizing the town manager to purchase firefighting personnel, personal protective equipment for the fire department of the town of Signal Mountain from NAFCO Incorporated through a member intergovernmental cooperative purchasing agreement, which is administered by National Purchasing Partners for an amount not to exceed $16,608 and to execute any documents necessary to complete said purchase. Boyd, you want to fill us in on the particulars?
Yeah, this is a budgeted purchase. We replace some of the turnout gear. This is the actual firefighting turnout coat, pants, and all. We do that periodically, so we're not having to buy all of them at once. It is a budgeted item. It's through a purchasing cooperative that we've used before. I believe we've done it for SCBA and even vehicles. We've used it for different ones for playground equipment, trash cans for the public works. So it's a process that we use regularly, and this again is budgeted and within the budgeted amount.
This was budgeted obviously prior to the whole COVID experience we're going through, right? This at all because of that? I'm asking again because is it possible that any of this funding might be reimbursable through any of the emergency funding?
I don't think so. This would be considered PPE, but not what we've been hearing about so much in recent weeks and months. This is firefighting apparel that we would be buying regardless of the pandemic.
All right, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? There's a lot of stuff in here. If anyone would like to see the entire list, it would take a long time to read through it all. But in the packet, in the council packet, which is available on the website, and you can take a look at all of that. Any discussion from anyone? Carol, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. Carries 4-0. Next, I'm down the list, and again, I'm not looking at the agenda. It's the dump truck resolution. Is that correct? Is that what you guys are seeing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a resolution authorizing the town manager to purchase one 2021 Kenworth P270 dump truck from MHC Kenworth of Chattanooga, Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's it. I guess that's in the name. Okay. For a total amount not to exceed $89,547 to be used by the Water Utility Department for the town of Signal Mountain. Boyd, you want to talk to us about this?
Sure. This was budgeted for this year, and then we had the front end loader backhoe that went down. That was also very old. It was going to be very expensive to repair, so we used those funds to replace that piece of equipment. We're going to try to get through this year with the dump truck. We went ahead and rebudgeted funds for it just to be safe, and at this point, glad we did, because it has reached the point it is really unsafe to use. I knew it was old, but frankly didn't realize how old It was purchased in July of '96, so it's pushing 24 years old. And we ran into another issue and concern in wanting to go ahead and move forward if with the manufacturer shutting down. We have other vehicles ordered that we're not sure when we're going to get them. So if we ended up waiting and then putting this out to bid for next year, or even going off state contract for next year, how long it would take to get the vehicle is unknown. We would suppose that it would be a very lengthy lead time on that. So we chose to go ahead this year and put it out to bid. We did bid specs, bid it, and looked for vehicles that were on the ground ready for purchase. It's the only way we saw we would get one anytime in the near future. So we did that and got multiple bids. And the one you have is the lowest qualifying bid. We had one that was lower that did not qualify on a couple submission issues. But that vehicle also, while it was new on the lot, was a 2019. The one that is in the packet and recommended is new on the lot, and it's a 2021. So that makes up a little bit of the difference. But again, the other bid simply didn't qualify. They didn't meet the standards of the submission. So that's where we are.
Anyone want to entertain a bid? I mean, a
How
motion,
about a motion?
motion would be better.
Second.
Okay.
Anyone is also welcome to purchase this, I guess, if you'd like.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't second guess you guys at all. And also, I'd like to say that the addition in the council packet of Adam's letter explaining, why and the process, that's helpful with this kind of thing. Anyone have any discussion on this? Carol, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Shell Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. Our last resolution is a resolution authorizing the chief of police to apply for a grant from the Tennessee Highway Safety Office in an amount not to exceed $15,000, which will result in payment for equipment and overtime to be provided as highway traffic safety grant for law enforcement activities to reduce speeding, aggressive driving, driving under the influence, and non-seatbelt usage for children and passengers within motor vehicles in the town. Is this the one we do every year, Boyd?
It is, and for the record, I would like to note that this is a retroactive authorization. It's something we do every year, and with everything else that was going on, just kind of slipped under the radar. Even though technically, under the circumstances, I might be able to approve it. Would prefer just to bring it up and let you know that we got behind on this one and asked for approval on it. This year it will be for overtime for traffic enforcement and replacing 4 moving radars that are older and starting to create issues, which I believe were also purchased with this grant several years ago. So it's been around long enough that we're replacing equipment that we've purchased on this grant. So it's been a very good program for us, and it is 100% program.
Do we hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Are all of our, you said the older radar systems, are they still working? Do we get to keep those in use? Will this give us additional, or do they have to be retired?
Some are not working. Some of the antennas have stopped working, but with this, they think we'll at least be able to and pieced together one other. So we'll actually be putting one in the detective's car as well. So all of the vehicles are equipped. Some of them are just starting to fail. So we will be fully equipped and probably even adding one to one of the other vehicles with what's left over from the current ones.
Any discussion? Carol, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. We have no ordinances to consider today, so we move into discussion. And this is going to be the water meter RFP update. So Adam, if you are listening, I'm unmuting you. And if you can put your camera as well. And if he's listening, he's going to take me about 20 seconds because that's how behind the YouTube feed is. While we're waiting for Adam, were you all able to hear Claire when she called fine?
Yes.
Yes.
Pretty low tech way to do that, but it works. Just put it on a speakerphone. So that's maybe
Yeah.
what we'll do in the future. Adam, for those who haven't met you, introduce yourself. Oh, you're muted. Try it again. Oops. Adam's a shy one. Still not hearing you, sir. Wait, is that it? We see you. But we can begin. Let Adam work on that. So, Adam's well-known contestant for wanting to buy a vowel. You look at his first name or his last name. All right, Boyd. Claire raised a lot of questions, and I know that some of these are just a part of the process of us making a decision. But we're considering purchasing these water meters. And I guess before we begin, let's just define some terms. AMR and AMI?
Yeah, AMR is basically just automated reading that you would still drive around, but they would automatically read to a unit in a vehicle. AMI is more of an infrastructure scenario where you have towers and collecting units around town that automatically collect the information and then sends that to the town hall.
In general, what have you guys discovered to be the advantages and disadvantages of each system?
Well, obviously the AMI is a more advanced technology. If you guys will recall, are you there now, Adam?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Okay, yep. Now you're good.
Okay. Having microphone
Good
issues.
time for you to show up.
Yeah.
Turn your volume down just a little.
As you recall, the Suez came up and did a presentation. They had been talking to us for a while and wanted to do a presentation on their program, which is really an all-inclusive program. And I think I mentioned in theory, I really like that concept. Also concerned about the possibility of putting in AMR and that technology not lasting through the life of the meters. As we heard that some systems that had some issues with that and being forced to upgrade. When Adam came on, we discussed it and decided to look more into the AMR before we went too much further. And really, while that issue in certain circumstances was a concern, would be a concern. Other companies and vendors seem to be very comfortable with the prospect of an AMR system lasting into the 15-year range, which is pretty much the accuracy life on the meters. So we chose to go ahead and put an RFP together and put it out, and got numerous submittals, and looked through those relative to without doing a detailed comparison relative to the projected cost of the AMI system. This was substantially less. And I asked Adam to draft a recommendation based on where we are right now. There's still some investigation to do, for lack of a better term, to check with some references and all, but as far as the equipment, he spent a lot of time reviewing the different meters and everything, and just asked for, as it stands right now, what do you think the recommendation is? And that's why in your packet, this recommendation in big red letters across the top says for discussion only. We wanted to kind of get you guys up to speed on where we are, what we've been looking at, and Sam and Adam have been doing most of the work on this, certainly, and he can better speak to it, but just in general terms, that's where we are. And with this, the next step would be to do an RFP for installation, which would be a companion to this. But before we went into all of that, we wanted to at least have a discussion on concept and get the council's thoughts.
So knowing that one person's definition of what a significant price difference is may differ from another person's definition, and I'm very ballpark figures here, the AMI system that we were talking about from Suez, the total cost of that thing going in was going to be significantly closer to 2 million than 1 million. And with the AMR that we're looking at, we're in the $600,000 to $700,000 purchase range, but what we don't know yet is the installation range, the installation cost. And I guess we don't know yet, or maybe Adam, do we know? There's more personnel costs, it would seem, associated with that, and maintenance costs might be higher because we bear more, but I guess I'm throwing all that out there for discussion.
Yeah, the installation side of it, I think we're kind of ballpark averaging based on some of the sales reps that we've talked to in other districts that they've installed meters in. We're looking at that probably around that $40 per meter range.
How many did we have?
Just on residential, we're at about 3,500.
How many?
3,500.
So we're looking at probably $150,000 to $200,000 installation.
Yes.
In there. So that's still maybe close to $1 million less than with the AMI system.
Yeah, that's huge.
Correct.
Well, as I recall from the Suez presentation, their proposition was more along the lines of a full service lease rather than an actual purchase. So, I mean, we have no idea what sort of costs they really had baked into that $2 million number. It was just kind of, well, I'll just say bait and switch.
Yeah, it was, again, as I said that day, I said, I really like the concept and idea of being hands-off. But as we discussed it, if we could find an AMR system that gets us pretty darn close in terms of meter reading, we're looking at 4 guys spending 3 weeks to read meters as opposed to one person spending a day or two. Still a tremendous advance in terms of economy of man hours to get the job done. And again, one of the main concerns on the front end was the potential for AMR technology not lasting along with the meters. And through Adam and Sam's research and all, I think we're past that concern as well. So,
Can I ask some questions along those lines, Adam? So
Absolutely.
the question that comes out is that the AMR is older technology than the AMI, and the AMR is being phased out. Did you find that to be the case did you talk to any towns or, I'm hoping and assuming you're probably talking to people other than the sales reps.
Yes, I've actually been talking with, the majority of my research so far has been with Tennessee American. They currently use the AMR technology as well. Obviously, they have many, many more meters than we do, and they're still using that technology. I have reached out to the references on some of these bids, just waiting to hear back on them, on people that are actually using these meters that were submitted in the bids. For our footprint, I mean, like Boyd said, we're already going to reduce it from my entire staff reading meters for close to 3 weeks to one guy being able to drive around and get all the readings in a day, maybe 2 at the most. But
that would happen.
Technology-wise,
That would happen with AMI also, though.
right. Now that would go down. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go out at all. Everything's in the office.
I just want to knock down some of the questions about AMR and what its weaknesses are. Are there topographical concerns where it doesn't work in some types of geology? Anything like that? I mean, you have the reader has to drive by it's a drive-by system, right?
Correct. Yeah, the AMR technology has been around a long time, still in use. In talking with a lot of these manufacturers, the computer system and the meter will read, for the life of the meter. We're not seeing anything out of the ordinary. Of the meter may last 15 years, but the system's only going to last and be available for 5. I mean, they coincide with each other. A lot of the companies offer a no stranded asset, which actually some of our local utilities around us are falling victim to that right now and trying to figure out what to do about it. So I definitely don't want to get in that boat either.
Have you gotten that granular down to if one fails? I mean, what's the liability? If a customer's meter gets filled with water, and the thing doesn't work, and who replaces them? We have to do all the replacing, right?
Correct. Yeah, these meters are an ultrasonic meter, no moving parts. They're guaranteed to continue their accuracy for 20 years. Now it's a 10-year full replacement and a 10-year prorated. But the majority of these meters that were submitted will withstand submerged conditions, which we do have a lot of up here. A lot of meter boxes up here hold water continually year round.
Are there any of the parts of the telemetry parts replaceable separate from the meter part? So like if one.
Yeah, we had one manufacturer that you can replace the battery in. Everybody else is a sealed unit for that reason. It's a completely sealed to keep water out. So the majority of the bids were a sealed unit.
What's the battery?
Which goes to show that's the better technology in my opinion.
And the battery life?
The battery life is also a 10 and 10. So 10-year full replacement. It's meant to last 20.
Are they charging somehow with water flow?
You'll have to explain what you mean.
Well, how does a battery stay charged for 20 years if there's not something giving it power?
It is meant to last that long.
Sounds like voodoo to me.
Now, some of the signal that you were getting to, the meters are meant to read with the lid sealed. Now, we have some of our meters that are going to have to be installed in backyards just because our water mains in backyards and not near the road. That'll be kind of a test system. If they pick up, which they should, from the road, we'll leave be. But if we need to, we can modify the lids, put the antenna. It's a disc mounted antenna that can mount flush onto the lid to extend the signal range.
Is there, so Claire mentioned that that Walden is replacing their meters, and who is the other community that is?
Hickson?
Hickson.
Yeah.
Is there any economy that could be had by, you know, sometimes if you buy things in a larger quantity, you get more efficiencies with price? I mean, is that something that's worth looking at or discussing, or?
It's
May like to
possible,
wait to-
but we don't know what units they're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I
They're
was,
looking to upgrade to AMI, or not.
yeah,
And one of the, one of the other questions, when we put this out, we had questions about the AMR and wanted a comfort level that the system would be in place for the life of the meters, but we weren't sure. When we were looking at being able to upgrade to AMI, as much as anything, that was a safeguard. If a need arose, we wouldn't have to buy all new meters. We could just upgrade what we have. But at this point, we're comfortable with the AMR system being in place for many years, and then the prospect of what it would cost to upgrade 15 plus years from now, there's no way of putting your finger on that number, and at that point you're probably looking at doing what we're doing now and just upgrading the system in general. So
and then one of the another point that Claire made that I was kind of interested to know if y'all are familiar with is about the SRF loan program.
am
That's
familiar
something.
with that. They're very low interest loans, which, if necessary, would be a good prospect. But at present, when we did the rate study, one of the things we looked at was the capital projects that we wanted to do, and the fact that you're probably one of the few utilities that's currently debt-free. And if we could do those projects and remain debt-free would be the best scenario. So
Yeah.
the rate study was done with an eye towards doing these projects over the course of the next several years, with the first one being the meters, and then getting into the capital improvements and main replacement in a methodical and measured sequence, so that the rates, as they come in and increase incrementally, would fund those without us having to go into debt.
Gotcha.
Wouldn't it make sense, though, to ask Walden and Hickson what they're doing, whether they're going AMR or AMI, and to do some joint purchasing arrangement? And finally, why not see what the AMI meters would cost versus the AMR, so that we would have the latest technology?
We can do that. There was one vendor that was going to do a test with with Walden, and the idea of finding an area that we could both test the products out at the same time was offered, and I said we'd be interested in doing that, but then we never heard back other than Walden is testing some. So we were looking at the same thing they were, but that didn't work out for some reason. But we can see what they're moving towards.
Adam,
When we met with the folks from Suez, one of the things that really impressed me about the AMI is the overall accuracy of the meters and the basically real-time information that you could get from them. And I assume that the AMRs are not that far along with their technology. How will they improve over the best of some of the meters that we're currently using? What improvement will we see other than the guys that are reading the meters?
I think and you were, at least for me, you were cutting out, so I think I got what you were asking. But the metering portion is the same.
Mm-hmm.
The ultrasonic meters, they're extremely accurate. The rest of it is how the information is transmitted. And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe these meters will store the same type of information that the AMI system meters do. It's just a matter if you need it, you have to pull it from the meter as opposed to it being a click away. But I think the detailed usage information and everything would still be available.
Yeah, that's correct. These are actually basically the same meters. The AMI portion is all your software and your transponder, radio towers, whatever everybody calls them. Each company has a different term for them, but collectors, yeah, that part gives you up to the minute availability on your computer screen. Now the meters that we have bid out, we can go out and actually get that reading and get the same information. They also will indicate, they'll give you a leak alert. They'll give you a no usage alert. They'll give you a reverse flow alert. So you can see if anybody's been tampering with it. It will show that stuff. You just have to actually go get it.
Okay.
but
It stores about 150 days worth of information.
Okay.
but we're just getting it once a month.
We can go get it anytime, at any point.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't know you needed to go get it if there wasn't something alerted.
Now that, right.
Yeah. But I also remember during the Suez AMI presentation, all of those extras, like the real-time information, they were all add-ons that weren't involved in their initial presentation. You remember that? If you wanted customers to be able to see things, those were all added costs.
Right.
Software side. Did in the actual meters themselves, you got four bids came in? Was that correct?
7.
7. Were they all? Was there a variety of meter brands?
Every one of them was different. It's seven completely different brands.
Okay. Everything else being the same, if they all came in at the same cost level in the AMR side, is this the one you would choose?
I believe so. They have the strongest local ties, which is I feel is helpful. We can get meters quicker if we need them. But out of all of these, the warranties were all comparable. The material was all comparable. The accuracy was all comparable. Like I said, this ultrasonic technology, it's actually been around a long time, and it is very reliable. So everybody's basically the same. Now you had We had some that were composite bodies, which offer a little cheaper on the meter side, per meter. Everything has its pros and cons as far as material. The meter we're looking at is an actual brass body. I just feel metal is always a more reliable option, even though composite is the newest thing.
The new metal.
Yeah.
So this is just a discussion, but moving forward, it seems like our next step is to find out what true installation costs would be. And then I'm assuming that we would contract for someone else to do this, or do you think you'd be doing it yourself? What do you think is the next step with that?
My initial thought was definitely have a contractor do the majority. And obviously I think we would get our money's worth more out of them being able to hit the neighborhoods where the meters are in the front yards, and we can have our people, help out with some of the harder to get to meters in the backyards. Might take a little extra time, just depending on how many people the contractor wants to have up here, changing meters all at once.
With as much time as it takes now to read meters, that limits the amount of time we would have to do that. And we are moving back on this cycle back to reading meters. We didn't want to get past 2 readings or 2 cycles where we were averaging and stuff. So we're about to move back into the reading process.
Would it be possible between now and the next council meeting to get an estimate on how a real serious estimate on how much it's going to cost? I mean, I know you said it kind of at the beginning of this, but have we talked?
I think it'll be difficult because it's something we would have to bid out. So people aren't going to want to give us too firm a quote.
When we move forward,
have to compete for it.
Do we need to vote to start the bid process?
No, I just, again, if there's some comfort level in this approach, then just like with this, we can initiate it, but that again is time and significant process that we didn't want to undertake unless we at least had this discussion. And if we're at that point, we can certainly look at some of these other things, talking WRUD again and Hickson, see what they're going with. And as Adam said, he's reached out to some of the references on these. We're still waiting to hear back from them. Again, that's why I want to make it clear that this was just for discussion. But before we went into another RFP process, we wanted to at least kind of get your feel for it and see what your thoughts, if there was a consensus that you were comfortable with how we're approaching it.
One last thing that I thought, another point that Claire made in her recommendations or questions she had was the possibility of having a demo of the unit. I mean, is that something that we would want to do?
It
Like the way it functions?
If this was, if we were going to go with an AMI system, I would certainly want to put some in and check it. And I think that's what WRUD is doing, and possibly Hickson as well.
Yeah.
Again, the meters themselves are pretty straightforward in terms of how they operate relative to one another. They're all ultrasonic.
Susanna, I think about it like getting a demo of an appendectomy. They wouldn't do a little appendectomy on you to show you what it's like. They would show you videos and the fact that all these other appendectomies have been done and this is how it works.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's not all that different from that, but I would want to actually have talked to, or Adam, should say, have talked to towns that have dealt with this vendor. I assume you got references from the bidder. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, the three references that they submitted are all Tennessee utilities. So I'm hopeful to hear back from them this week. So.
And I guess, you know, the other cost is installation. And I know you've got a ballpark, but that's why that RFP becomes really important, because there is a chance, and I know people submitting to an RFP don't want to hear this, but there's a chance you do it and say, this doesn't work for us, right?
Sure. And that's really kind of the approach when we decided we wanted to kind of step back. Again, Suez, you know, they wanted to make the presentation and get that as our first look, and I was fine with that. We had to start somewhere. And again, concept, I like the idea, but again, we felt we really needed to take a hard look at this technology and really take a pretty methodical approach to this decision and getting the information you guys need.
All right, anyone else have recommendations moving forward on this subject?
I'd really like to know what Walden and Hickson are doing and the cost for the AMI meter before making any final decision.
Bill, when you say cost for the AMI meter, are you speaking of just the meter or the infrastructure? Because that comes with a whole other infrastructure needed in order to make that work.
Yeah, I understand that.
That's kind of
So
what.
what is it going to end up costing us on a per meter basis for everything it takes to make that meter work?
You mean if we did it separate from like the Suez proposal we've already seen?
Right. Yeah, again, the Suez was talking about kind of a full service lease versus our buying the meters and the infrastructure. But I think it'd be easy enough to do an apples to apples comparison on, you know, the AMR system costs this per meter and the AMI costs that per meter. And are they in the same ballpark?
We can, you know, I think that'd be pretty easy on the meter side. The infrastructure side might be more of a challenge, because I think in the AMI, the infrastructure systems vary a lot more than the systems for the AMR. I mean, they're basically a mobile unit that you drive by and collect. The AMI, there's a larger variety of how they accomplish the collection.
Do you generally have to contract with another company to do the data processing on AMI?
I think it's the same. They can design the system so that it works with our billing software. But I mean, we can get as close to an apples to apples as possible, down to doing an RFP for an AMI system. I'm not arguing against that. I'm just trying to explain where the difference would be. I don't think the difference in cost in the meters will be as much of an issue as the difference in cost of the required infrastructure. But we can find out what that would be.
And maybe I'm like kind of out of my depth here. So I'm learning a lot as we're talking about this. But like if you pay, you know, a lot of times with big investments like this, like you pay a lot more up front on the front end, but then maybe upgrades later might cost less. So you get sort of an economy of scale further down the road. Am I wrong to even like, I mean.
I think in this case, if I understand what you're saying, change one to the other, there might be a little bit, but as far as the system themselves, you have to have everything on the front end. You gotta have all the meters and all the required collectors, whatever form that takes, so that the system functions and can communicate with your hardware in the office.
And then like on the AMI system, if you did invest in something like that, like they said on the AMR system, after 15 years, you would expect like 15 to 20 years accuracy. And then the meters would have to be upgraded or replaced. Is that right? So would you get the same kind of performance or longevity with an AMI system as well?
Can I tell, I want to speak to that and tell me if I'm wrong. They're the same meters basically, Susanna.
Uh-huh.
It's just the way the meters are read.
Okay.
So I keep getting hung up on the AMI because it would help us identify lost water, whether system loss or individual customer loss, quickly, rather than waiting a month to find out that we have an issue somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to that point, you would just have to compare it. In my opinion, you would have to compare that to what it costs you per gallon to the upfront cost and how long it's going to take you to make up that difference in money. If you look at it that way.
Sure.
I mean, if it's another close to $1 million to be able to get that information right now, compared to a gallon of water, you know.
But to Bill's point, the cost of, the only thing we have to compare to right now is the turnkey maintenance, all-inclusive scenario with Suez, which would be, I mean, I don't know if you'd ever make that up, but in a straight purchase scenario for an AMI system, that's what we don't know right now. And we can.
And it would be, I mean, these bids came in as, you know, an upgradable system, and all these manufacturers offer an AMI. And to Boyd's point, some of them were just a couple collectors, some of them were more collectors, some of them are sale-based with no collectors. So I would say you would get a lot of different prices other than even Suez price.
Yeah, and that's the point that I was making. I think it's something, if we want to take a hard look at that, I think it would take an RFP to do that. Again, that's not arguing against it, just saying that I think that to get the detail we would need, we could do that.
You know, my thought was,
if we're going to do an RFP for installation on what we have, then I guess we could do them at the same time.
well, and I'm thinking even just asking the successful bidder, what's the difference in price for AMI versus the AMR that you proposed? And surely we come up with a ballpark number that says, okay, it's $100,000 more, maybe it's worth investing in AMI, or it's $1 million more and that's not in the cards. We'd at least get a ballpark figure to see if it's worth investing our time and effort in the bid process, wouldn't we?
Sure. And I don't recall the specifics of their system.
Adam, would you ever consider, and maybe you guys are considering this anyway, I don't know what the technical term is for like a hub in a water system where many lines branch off of a large line. What do you call that?
Well, you have your distribution lines coming from the pump stations that you're talking about.
Yeah, I know that there are places where you put in switches where you could shut off water to a whole neighborhood or to maybe 2 neighborhoods. At those switch areas, if you're trying to diagnose our own water loss issues, do you put meters at those? Do you meter our stuff, not what's being sold?
That's called zone metering.
Zone, okay, there
That's,
you go. Are we looking at zone metering within this? And could it be possible to get some of the diagnostic help from the AMI if you did zone metering? And since you have fewer of those, you could check those weekly if you needed to, if you were trying to determine water lossage.
yeah, now zone metering, you would obviously have a lot larger meter. So if you have a 12-inch line, you're going to need a 12-inch meter.
And I assume that costs 12.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, and it would just give you information for a zone. So if just, for instance, if we looked at Carriage Hills and had a zone meter for that, it just tells you that somewhere in Carriage Hills, there's an issue. So it narrows it down, but it wouldn't be as beneficial as the direct access to AMI information, but it certainly helps in identifying water loss. It tells you where to start looking.
So there are no zone meters in your plan as of now?
No, this is just based on trying to get these meters upgraded since the meters up here are so old. That is definitely something we can look into. The zone metering obviously works better in your description of branches where there have dead ends. We don't have a lot of dead ends. For water quality purposes, grid systems are what most utilities use just to keep water circulating. Dead ends are bad issues for water quality. So it's hard to zone that kind of stuff off when you have a grid.
All right. Any other specifics on this?
But I can definitely get some AMI numbers from the bidders that we've got.
Boy, do you mind if while we have Adam, we get or maybe you're doing this later, a brief update on Interconnect?
No, it's fine.
So what's happening with that, Adam?
Well, I guess about a month ago, we dug some holes, dug some test holes down on Miles, looking at the Miles Road area as one of the, I guess that was one of the recommendations from the study. So in trying to get enough feel for what kind of numbers we're looking at if we were to connect Walden's Ridge 12-inch and run our own 12-inch up to James Boulevard, kind of what we'd be looking at that price. And looking over the study, I know that was one of the options, but not the highest recommended option. And kind of based on the study, I'm in agreement with the study that just connecting right there to our existing 6 inches would probably be the best bet.
But we have other parties involved and they all have to agree to that, right?
Certainly, but we were looking at that, doing the pilot holes, trying to figure out. Ron was asking what kind of rock we had through there, so they started looking at that, and also determined with talking to Loretta along that northern shoulder. There's also some old storm drain structures in there that are going to be an issue, and then. At that point, like you said, about that time is when we ran into our current situation with the pandemic and scaling back staffing and trying to get things done in a little different manner. So frankly, we haven't done anything on it in a little while. One of the things that I started looking at in connection with this, one of the things we wanted to accomplish we're trying to get that 12-inch feed to the tank. This would get it up to James and connect to an 8-inch line, and then we would need to run the 12 on up to the tank if we want to be able to feed that. And I know it's technically up in the air right now, but as it stands right now, a major development's been approved at Timesville and Taft. And unless something happens in the courts that prevents that from happening, if it moves forward, there's going to be a 12-inch line running all the way to Taft or to Timesville for Ron. If that happens, we're about 1,500 feet from our tank. If we do what we're talking about now, we're going to be, I think, over 3,000 feet from our tank that we would have to run. So that's kind of a new wrinkle in it as well, is that Ron says if that moves forward, they're putting a 12-inch line all the way into Timesville. And then it's just a straight shot to our tank from there. So it might be a much better scenario cost-wise to look at that. When they looked at the interconnect and everything to begin with, that wasn't in the mix. So that's something else that has come up. But again, we did start looking at that and started investigating that northern shoulder. But in the last few weeks, just have not had the time to deal with it.
Following up from the, sorry, my camera went down. It'll be right back. Following up from the meeting we had together with the two water boards, is there anything that we still need to get done for them or that we're waiting from them for us?
That is it. The information on that subsurface conditions along miles. And at that point, again, with the storm structures and stuff that we're going to be dealing with, I mean, we may be at the best scenario is to get Ron to give us a worst scenario idea of what the cost would be to do that installation.
Right. That was going to be the number after we gave him the subsurface scenario, right? He was going to.
Right.
So, you said you have more holes that still need to be dug. Is that the case?
Well, we weren't planning on digging anymore. We dug 3 within 500 feet from the intersection. We haven't dug anything up towards James. Where we dug was basically vacant property, so we didn't disturb any residents' yards. So if we need to dig anything up towards James, we're going to have to get in some yards.
But you think you have a sufficient sampling that maybe we could get at least a rough number from?
Yeah, the bedrock got deeper as we went.
What? That never happens.
So that Timesville scenario sounds pretty compelling if that happens. And I presume since would be 12-inch from Timesville to our nearest tanks, each system could feed the other. Is that?
I don't know that it would improve the scenario of us feeding them much, because still ultimately the elevation is the issue.
Yeah, they'd have to install a pump.
I think they still have to do a pump, yes. But again, it was just one of those when we started looking at not only the issues on miles, but how much further we have to go to the tank. It's just something that's never been in the mix before. And if they're going to build that, they're going to have that water line. So while he didn't say specifically, I got the impression that once that project moves forward, that will be something that's done pretty quickly. Um, and could be a far better scenario, not only just cost wise, but efficiency wise, being able to feed that tank much sooner. I mean, for about the same amount of line, we would actually be reaching the tank instead of getting about halfway to it. Um, and yeah, I'm sure like everything else, the process of involved with that development has been slowed down by, you know, everything the last couple of months too, but I think it's something we might want to at least investigate.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else we need to add to this discussion? If not, we'll move on to the next. Thank you, Adam.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, use of recreation facilities discussion. I had it. You guys, the rest of you guys probably got an email also from Keith Bowman earlier, and I've had conversations with Patrick Daverson and just other folks that are. Everyone's trying to figure out what they're going to do next, and the answer is we don't know yet because we aren't at that place. And so I wrote. If anybody else wants to write Keith back, I already wrote him and just said anything we're deciding appears to be sticking to a 2-week cycle because that's about as far as we can go right now. And we're waiting for the governor and we're waiting for the health department if anything came from those two bodies. So the Boyd, take over anytime you want, but we still can't do things at the MAC. So that one's easy at this point. There's been no new directive, has there, Boyd, on playground equipment?
Not to my knowledge. Indoor play areas are still prohibited, but I don't think anything's changed on playgrounds.
How did it look over the weekend?
The only issue we had is unfortunate. We had some folks that moved barriers and went into the Rainbow Lake parking area, and officers became aware of that and dealt with it. And it turns out that they were down there working on bridges at the request of the group that's having the work done, and just failed to tell anybody about it. And well, we made contact with those folks and make sure that if they're going to do that, they contact us and we can get, you know, we had a while back, we had folks that were working with TWRA to do some research and needed to go down there, and I directed them to put something very obvious on their vehicles that said something like TWRA research or something, so that when somebody pulls up and sees that, it explains why they're there, and it doesn't start the avalanche of, well, they parked there and I can, and you know, so it didn't get out of hand or anything else. So if we'd known what they were doing, we could have dealt with it. But that was really the only issue we had this weekend.
And our officers kind of, they were watching the ball fields and all that. Everything appeared to be, you know, within social distance.
Didn't have any issues when I was out. There were people out, but they were being used just as we had hoped. Small groups, families, nothing beyond a handful of people.
Eventually, we're going to have to find a way to open our trails back up. Susanna, are you speaking? You're muted.
Yeah, I've had, many people who live up here who are asking about Rainbow Lake. So I don't know. I'm interested to hear what other people think about that too.
It's good for people to get out and walk. It's not good if you have a place that becomes, like bugs to a light. If it's the only place open and everyone shows up and there are too many people trying to use it at once. I don't know what the answer is to that.
People are using Green Gorge now that that's reopened.
Mhm.
And from what I've seen, many of them are wearing masks, as they probably should, and maintaining reasonable distance from one another.
Where are they
I-
parking, Bill?
Never seen a ton of cars there either.
Where are they parking, Bill?
At the bottom of Druid, and also at the what is it, ravine that
Yeah.
runs into Palisades?
Green Gorge and
Park there. I think a lot of people are, people are kind of all over the place, but many people are just sort of getting conditioned to just wearing masks when they go, if there's a chance they're going to come in contact with other people. And I've been really encouraged at Pruitt's to see so many people wearing masks. All of the shoppers and things like that. And so, I don't see why. Maybe we should open it and let people, I think we're all sort of in this condition of having to take precautions. And I think people are pretty responsible about it. Maybe we can control the parking, or I know that's an issue.
It's a
That's
big,
a secondary issue.
it's a big issue. We just can't go back to having Ohio Avenue lined with cars.
No.
Cheryl, what do you think?
Say again?
I can't come up with a good way to limit the parking, and short of having an officer there to say, okay, we've got all we can handle right now, and you next people, you're going to have to go away and come back in another hour or so. I just don't know a good way to limit that, nor to limit the groups of people who are going to be hiking together. I see it on my own street. Unless we got a whole lot of families of 15 people or more, there's still a problem with people grouping together who should not be together.
We don't police that, and the state doesn't.
Exactly.
It's almost impossible to police. Let's talk through some scenarios. I'm not suggesting any of these, but let's say we kept the cones out there like we did at the beginning, Boyd. Parking lot is open, but there are cones down the street. What's to keep, probably cones, because the national park is still closed. Signal Point is still closed, still keeping cones out on Signal Point. I haven't figured out any way that anybody thinks is a good idea anyway to stop everyone from just going up to James Boulevard and filling up Alexian's parking lot and filling that place up with more people that can handle it because it's another place that's open. Now, one thing people can do right now is drive out to the high school where there's a bigger parking area, and basically end up on the same trails, right? Because the Cumberland Trail you can access from out there. Anyway, so what happens if we open the parking lot back up again and are very strict on people parking on the streets, meaning ticketing and towing?
Do we have signage up there right now that says if you park on that street, your car could be towed?
there are no parking signs and barricades up that say no parking anytime. You don't have to have a warning of towing, I don't believe. if we move towards opening it back up, I would, probably go ahead and look at getting some permanent signage up. We've seen, I think it was last weekend or at some point, we did have issues over at, Signal Point, cars parking over there, and, had to deal with that. And people will move cones, while they help. I think we would probably at least put some permanent signage up and then supplement that with some additional signage and cones, but, I
Could
wanted at least that.
Would it communicate anything useful to have a sign that says when the parking lot is full, the park is at capacity? That way, just hear me out. That way, if an officer was down there and people were going up to James to park, the officer would be enforcing something that the council said temporarily while this is going on. When the parking lot is full, the park is at capacity.
Theoretically, you could, yes, but you would have to be there to enforce it. And, you know, the scenario that comes to my mind is if you have a resident who wants to go and the parking lot is full of vehicles from off the mountain or, you know, other states or whatever, that would be a bit of a bitter pill.
Yeah, there's not a perfect solution for this, but that would maybe work itself out a little bit. Residents walk, you know, area residents anyway, the folks in the neighborhood walk to those places. And again, you go all the way back to the CDC guidelines from early on. That's what they recommended, is that if you can walk to a place to hike, that's what you should do, but you shouldn't drive somewhere else to keep clusters from happening. I guess what we're saying, if we do that, is if our parking lot is full, that's the cluster. That's as full as it can be. We're encouraging social distancing of cars, I guess, at that point. Anybody have thoughts on that?
Well, if we're talking about signage, perhaps we could have a sign that says access to residents of the town of Signal Mountain only.
You want to march and carry that?
Not necessarily.
I think that, well, the situation is complicated, frankly, by the Cumberland Trail. Right now, they can access that via Prince Cooper, as opposed to coming through, you know, technically the trailhead for this portion is at Signal Point, but Signal Point's closed. The other access point, most direct, is Rainbow Lake, and that's closed. But state parks are back open, which Cumberland Trail is. But it can be accessed from a different point.
Well, what about county parks, like Shackleford Ridge Park?
I don't know that they've ever been technically closed as a whole. I think some, like the River Park and some others, but I believe county parks to some degree have remained open.
Except, but they're closed to events, Boyd. That's what their wording says.
Right. They're more of a day use scenario.
Yeah, and they're vague on what an event is, Bill. So, like, even you can't have a practice under that. But you can take your kids out to kick a soccer ball. None of us wants to do anything, I'm assuming, that is dangerous and also goes against, the way what we know works and the community we're a part of and trying to protect and the larger picture and all that. We're in good shape because people have been doing a good job. Certainly locally, like Susanna mentioned earlier, and like Bill mentioned on the trails. Those are draws. I think it's a shame to penalize local residents during the week when you don't have folks coming from out of the week to not be able to walk the trails that are one of the reasons they live here and things that are actually good for them, and in particular if they're working from home still. The problems are mainly weekends. Is there a
I don't know about that. With so many people working from home, nobody really knows what day it is at any given time. And I know here in our neighborhood, it's like every day is Saturday. I see no change in adults and or kids.
Yeah, but those aren't people driving in from another town to come walk up here. I'm talking about.
Correct, but those people from other towns are also supposed to be staying home, most of them working from home, and it's the same issue.
Yeah, but you see my point about weekends being a bit different than during the week, though?
I see your point, but I don't think people who typically come on the weekends, if they're working from home and the kids aren't in school and they have nothing better to do, why not drive up to the mountain and go to Rainbow Lake
Oh, that's
on a
I-
Wednesday?
because they're working from home somewhat. So
I think we may see heavier use during the week than normal, but I think without a doubt, the primary issues are weekends. Doesn't mean the other days aren't, but before this happened and now that it has, that continues to be the scenario where the biggest issues occur on the weekend. Maybe having more during the week now than we would have, but still the weekends are the main issue. And frankly, that's, that speaks to why we've done some of the other things. And not having the transfer station open on Saturday and not doing recycle on Saturday. I mean, it seems bad to word it this way, but we're really trying to keep people from using it on those days because we know those are the heavy use days, but we try to figure out how to make sure people can use it. Okay, maybe it's not that all that different a situation.
What if we just keep the parking lot closed and open up the trail?
So I think that's a good solution. The danger is the parking all goes to James Boulevard.
I think that maybe with signage, maybe we try to control a little bit of that with signage and to discourage. I don't know. I mean,
Well,
I wish that there was a way so that people that live up here could access it, who are, willing to be socially responsible, use social distancing, so that people that, can enjoy it, and we can discourage people to drive over there in their cars and access that trailhead.
Bill's point was the accurate one. He's got the right answer, but it's just that's a tough call to do. It creates a whole other bunch of problems. I guess Harry would need to weigh in on. I don't even know if you were serious, Bill. Is that a serious proposal?
Yeah, I mean, it's our property, and we have the right to regulate its use.
We can't.
What did you say, Bill? Just to only allow people who live up here to use it?
Who are residents of the town of Signal Mountain.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Well,
Or do you have to be with somebody who is a resident of the town of Signal Mountain?
the why not becomes, well, then is that, what if you're from Walden? Does that mean that Signal Mountain, you get into this thing, can you go then to McCoy Farms? Falling Water Falls? It gets sticky. I think that's tough. if parking was limited to, the park is a public parking spot, but the streets, I've talked to you guys about the sticker idea, and I think maybe that could work, but I see the complications with that as well. Let's go with what you suggested, Susanna, and discuss that and see how that works. So the parking lot is closed, and you say open to foot traffic only. That, I think, is probably going to fix it during the week, but not on the weekends. I think you create another problem on the weekends.
We could try it and see how it goes. I mean, I don't want to create more problems for our police officer to have to, deal with, but I also really wish that we could, allow citizens up here to have access to that.
Well,
But
they do have access. They just don't have access through that entrance right now, because you can drive up Shackleford Ridge and get on those trails. Is it Timberlinks or Shackleford up there where you go in through Prentice Cooper? Which is that, Boyd?
Well, to the park, you would go out Shackleford Ridge, but there's access points along Timberlinks as well.
Yeah, where people ride four-wheelers and horses and things. And that's what I know a lot of folks have been doing already. So people are getting out and hiking. Of course, I'm concerned, that we don't do something that creates a problem for our officers as well. But the bigger concern is that we create a cluster that a lot of people are going to, and that we're causing problems with what we ought to be working together to solve. And so that's why I lean towards, I don't know what the good answer is. Harry, is there a magic legal answer that we don't have?
No. I mean, people are gonna, I don't want to say take advantage, but if they can use it, they're gonna use it.
Is there a reason why, or maybe, I don't know if this is the case, Boyd, did you get any reports of officers driving up Timberlinks and seeing masses of cars parked along the side of the road to have access to the trails there?
No. Okay.
I wonder if for the time being, we just leave it as is. They can access through Shackleford or Timberlinks, as long as that doesn't become a traffic problem, and just wait it out a little bit longer before we open the main pier at Rainbow Lake, the main parking lot.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
I mean, they have access.
yeah, I'm comfortable with that. And Susanna, we can tell people where they do have access. But in the long term, we've got to figure out what we're going to do about that park.
Yeah.
And we can't we can do this every 2 weeks, but we're going to look pretty silly if we do. So, yeah.
We could
Yeah.
post, you want to post a sign at the parking lot, the current parking lot, and tell people where they can access? I sort of say tell people where they can go, but they probably frown on that, but tell them where they can access the trails.
We can do that.
Access to the Cumberland Trail at.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
All right. Any other thing we need to discuss with rec facilities, Boyd?
Yes. One of my main concerns and worries has been the pool.
Oh, yeah.
And how we can do anything there that even closely resembles social distancing. But we received notice end of last week, Thursday or Friday, that the Chattanooga Area Swim League has canceled their season for the summer. So the swim team won't be using the pool or anything along those lines. And I just wanted to discuss what that looks like if, I mean, on a relatively slow day, we're talking 100+ people at the pool. And I just don't know how you get where you would need to be with that many people.
Have we started selling passes yet?
Not to my knowledge. And that's one of the things that, you know, I was thinking about too, when you look at revenue and everything, if we try to limit the number of people that are there in any given time or day, and I would imagine the likelihood that someone would buy a season pass, not knowing if they would make the cut on any particular day and not be able to go, that seems unlikely. So, you know, a lot of the scenarios you run, and I'd love to see it open. Personally, I just don't know how you do that. Another consideration, you know, and a lot of this stuff, you have the public safety aspect on one side, and then you have the economic aspect on the other, and you try to figure out which is, you hate to say most important, but which one of those wins out. You try to address both of them as best you can, but you know, in a lot of this stuff that it's just, we have to open this back up or get back to that. In this situation, they kind of align on the same side. And again, it's not necessarily the side I want to come down on, but if we open the pool, even given a normal revenue stream, we're looking about $50,000 we generally don't cover, and it costs to run the pool. And I don't know that being able to operate, you know, at limited capacity just exacerbates that. And right now, you know, we can't open it. Pools are still listed as prohibited, but as we've seen recently, changes are coming pretty quickly. So I wanted to be able to have the discussion on the front end.
Let's say the state opens them up and the health department says, open them up.
Pardon?
Let's say the state says open them and the health department says open them for the county. That still wouldn't be a rule for us. I'm just saying, assuming those two things are true, and they're not yet, social distancing guidelines are still going to be in.
Right, that's the thing. Even when they say you can do it, the barber shops and the salons and everything over the last couple of weeks, we've seen this kind of a wave of openings. They all say you can open, but you need to follow these guidelines. And that's kind of what I'm getting to. Before we get to that point, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how we get to those guidelines.
Well, are you having a hard time? I mean, we know what the guidelines are.
Right.
It's just in enforcing the guidelines is the
right. How we meet those guidelines, how that facility functions, and the people at that facility meet the guidelines that are in place in social distancing and large groups.
Are you thinking in terms of like, well, of course you got the restrooms, I guess, like the public restrooms there, and then you've got the snack bar area, and I guess I mean, I can imagine people being up there and being spaced out, I guess, you know, and in the pool, it's, you know, they say it's safe because of the chlorine.
The virus won't live in the water,
Right.
but that doesn't change the fact that you're breathing above the water and you can still transmit, just as if two people are standing in the pool and they're talking, you could transmit the same way that you would if you were standing anywhere else.
Yeah, you're right.
And you know, just in growing up in the pool and spending my whole career pretty much watching that, it's the idea of, especially the kids and teenagers, maintaining any distance from one another. That's not why they're there.
Yeah.
You know, they're there to play with
Well,
each other.
the state and county health departments still prohibit gatherings of 10 or more people, don't they?
Right, that's the guideline is,
Yeah.
right now is 10 or more people, and again, the guidelines still say you can't open pools. But with the changes coming as quickly as they have, and we're on the cusp of the pool season, I'm not sure when those things that we can rely on right now say we can't open the pool, those might go away fairly quickly, and then we're left to make a decision.
Can we revisit the topic in 2 weeks? See what transpires?
We certainly can. And again, my desire was simply to kind of get it on y'all's radar that at some point, and kind of like Rainbow Lake, I guess, but at some point we are going to have to make a call. But I think it's one that's coming, and it may be rather difficult.
Yeah, what they'll say is when they say you can reopen, they'll say you can reopen as long as you maintain social distancing. And so what we have to consider is, can that be done? And if so, how? How do we try to do that? Or do we want to try to do that? All right, anything else on recreational facilities? Gym's still closed.
Correct.
Have you looked out your window and seen people using the tennis courts, Boyd?
They are, as a matter of fact.
Good.
And I'm guessing at least 30 feet apart.
Okay, I thought you were going to say
30 people.
No. It looks just fine at the moment.
Okay.
All right, on town operations, this Boyd's probably going to take over. I've had a couple of reports of people being unhappy with the wait times for recycle, but it's working for the most part. Anybody else?
I was there today, and I didn't wait over 15 minutes, if that long. I would say, though, that there were, other than Loretta and the Orange Grove employee and me, there weren't too many people wearing masks. But the wait time wasn't so bad.
I think last week we really kind of expected to be problematic in that regard because people had stocked up on recyclables.
Yeah.
So each individual that was coming was taking longer than normal because they had so much. And so far, we're just one day into it, but it does look like it's a lot better so far this week. On that, it's kind of didn't plan it this way, but this will be largely a combo discussion item and manager's report, because I wanted to run down some of the things that we are doing. And recycle is one that we're expanding the hours from 11 to 6 instead of 11 to 3. So
Oh, good.
that should help. We're going to
That's
continue for a while to leave it on Monday through Friday. But expanding the hours into the evening should let a few more people get there a little easier. And again, spread out the volume. Transfer station, we're going to open that up through the full day from 8 to 4. Same thing Monday through Friday. As of this Wednesday, we're going to replace the construction materials and bulky item container. But that is for resident use only, no contractors. We'll see how that goes. That being the case, next month, June, we'll do the first Friday bulky pickup as well. So both of those, expanding the hours for both, and then getting the other hopper back in place so we can take more stuff. I think again will help some folks and address some of the concerns. But really, the only way we can do that and manage it is to restrict it to residents, because the contractor will come in there in one run, fill that container up, and then we just got that many more swap outs to do. So anyway, that
to be clear, Boyd, this is a contractor who's taking a window out and replacing a window for a resident. That contractor can't take it. It has to be the resident himself.
right. When a contractor bids a job, they're going to include the cost of disposal of that material, and then often we'll try to take advantage of the use of our facility and offset the cost on their side of the equation. And usually it's not a situation like that when you have a contractor. It's usually very large loads, and they're doing a job for a cost, for a price, and generating revenue for themselves. And then that limits the number of residents that are able to take advantage of the use. So again, as we're trying to ease into how we optimize service and availability, that's where we are on the next step. We are going to ask that everyone continue, if at all possible, to come on the day that your trash service is. I don't know that we've ever turned anybody away, but especially with expanding the hours, should be easier for folks to do, and that does help spread the load out and keep getting so busy and crowding the facilities, which has been the goal all along.
Can you thank Loretta for all of us for showing up there so often and keeping an eye on it and keeping it going?
She does a very good job. Everybody there's worked hard, and for the most part, folks have been understanding. And again, we expected last week to be a little hectic, but so far it looks like things have settled down once everybody got the big loads out of the way. And the rest of the town in general, we've evolved back to pretty much full staffing. The town hall is still closed. That's one thing I wanted to talk about. And frankly, things are working very, very well that way. We've been being able to get building permits and everything online. People can get their water turned on and off online or with a phone call, or for a while there were folks that tried to come in, but that really hasn't been the case. Now that we've got staff pretty much back up to the normal levels and everybody's spaced out, we have an order of masks that just came in so that staff can use those. We got additional hand sanitizer and all. Being able to address the needs of citizens, even if they can't come in the building, will improve even more because we'll be able to respond more quickly with everybody in place. So that has been pretty much at each meeting, trying to be in a position to lay out how we've improved or expanded or moved back to some closer semblance of normalcy. So this last couple of weeks has been pretty significant in that regard.
How about brush pickup?
That is going underway. It was slowed for a while by the fact that they were chipping at the facility. It was pretty much loaded out, and then they came in to do the chipping and created the mulch and hauling mulch and all that. But they are picking up brush and started the right of way mowing as well.
They just came through my neighborhood. They
All
picked up
right.
All right. Do you have anything else in your manager's report?
That's pretty much it. Other than asking if council has any additional guidance on anything that wants changed or altered in terms of our operation. We have just concluded the period of time that council authorized for maintaining normal pay and everything, and that's again how we've evolved back into staffing and have used the time to try to figure out what things we need to address, and having more people on site working, pretty straightforward things in some regards, but a lot that you don't really think about. And we've been able to work through that, and so we're pretty much back up to normal staffing for regular folks. And of course, the one main facility that is continued to be closed will be MAC, and nobody is on the staff level is working there. The library is closed, but the full-time staff has been working there. And I have not heard from Karen in terms of, I've asked her to really get guidance from the library board in terms of their operation.
We haven't met.
That's where we are, and certainly welcome any guidance or suggestions from council.
Anybody have anything?
Great job to everybody on staff through all of this mess.
I appreciate it. Everybody's, it's nice when you tell people they have to stay home and they get upset. We have great people who want to get the job done and do it well. And it's, I think, again, having everybody back in here is gonna help. I think they are more comfortable with not having public access. And as long as we can continue that a little bit longer and make sure that we're still improving service over what we were able to do initially, I know they would appreciate that, but at the same time, making plans for the point at which that's not feasible any longer. So we'll be ready when that time comes.
All right, ready to move on to the next item?
Yes, sir.
Let me hop back over. Is this, I'm not looking, I've got some other docs open. Are we down to communications from the mayor and then communications from the council?
Yes.
All right, so I've got just a couple of quick things. One is what I hope we all start doing. The Planning Commission meeting met Thursday. We had a minor final plat submitted, and then we had one that took a little more conversation. This is for a wind tree expansion that's going on, and that plat was submitted, but it's also going to need some bonding. And I'm reading from the draft minutes, by the way. I'm not going to read the whole minutes to you, but this is one of the things we talked about doing. And Planning Commission also mentioned, had a brief discussion towards the end of that meeting that we probably do need to move in the direction of some ongoing Planning Commission training that's either in addition to or maybe in conjunction with the fact that I think it's 4 hours. Cheryl used to be the chair of that. That we're required to do, but it might make sense for us to do some training that's a little more elemental than that, a little more elementary. So anyway, that was the discussion of that. Boyd and I did a conference call with Patsy and Bo and Bo Watson, Patsy Hazelwood and Bo Watson. And who was the other state representative on there?
Gardenhire.
Todd Gardenhire was on there. Mayor of Lookout, Bill Trohannis, and I'm not sure who the other there was an executive. Anyway, the general discussion was they wanted to know what the towns need and what our questions were. And my questions, everybody all has the same questions because the state is short of funding. And I'll just give you a quick summary of my take on that. And Boyd, if you see it differently, feel free to chime in. During the 2009 crisis, the state ended up getting about, I believe Bo Watson said about $10 billion from that was from the federal government that was distributed throughout the state. And for the most part, during that issue, those funds were not tied to anything. The state could sort of figure out how it wanted to use those funds. This time, as of when we had that meeting about a week ago, the state has received about $3 billion from the federal government. It's pretty close. I think that's what he said. That's correct, isn't it, Boyd?
I don't recall exactly.
Yeah, I remember the numbers. I just want to make sure I wasn't confusing million with billion, but it was about $3 billion for the state. But Senator Watson said the issue is all of this is tied to COVID this time, and there's no discretionary. And so in the prior crisis, there was discretionary funding. There's not much this time. The town of Signal Mountain, because we don't get a lot of our income from local option sales tax, we're probably not going to have as many budget problems as the larger areas are, or the areas that get most of their revenue from property tax. We will see some of our state street income go down, state street aid. So we may experience some of that. One of the questions I asked was about grants. During the last time there was a crisis, did the state basically pull back on any grants that had already been approved? And Senator Watson said they did. And one of the things that we'll have to watch out for as we move forward during the year is spending money where part of it's going to come from the state and part of it's going to be federal. And one of the things that I think Boyd was going to find out, or maybe Sam was going to find out, is our LPRF grant for the Marion Driver expansion project. What portion of that is federal and what portion of that is state? It's, if you remember, that's about $800,000, and it's $400,000 for us and $400 in grants, but we don't know what percentage of that $400 is state and what's federal. And Senator Watson wasn't saying we wouldn't get it, just that you can't necessarily be 100% sure going forward on that kind of stuff. So I think that's going to be a concern for us. Anything else from that you think that's pertinent to?
So I think at the end, towards the end, and I think most the vast majority of the grant funds that we have allocated to us at this point are federal. Doesn't mean that isn't at risk as well, but I think we're in decent shape there. But towards the end of the meeting, they actually, I mean, basically asked us to look at the grants that we have and think about a priority order for those. But then also the state revenue that we get, how that's prioritized, which is really very easy because you look at where you get most of it, and that's your priority. But it was just enough that, you know, concerned about revenue in the coming year anyway, and that just kind of tweaked that a bit.
Boyd, are you getting hungry? I heard your stomach there.
That is my chair.
No, it wasn't.
To answer your question, yes, but that was my chair.
All right, so that's all for me. And I guess I just want to say thank you guys for enduring a 2-hour meeting, 2-hour and 20-minute meeting. But these are odd times, and it seemed like we had a relatively light agenda, and I don't think we've wasted any of our time on this. We've just needed to talk through these things. So everybody's appreciated. We're on to council members. Anybody have anything you want to bring up?
I was going to talk for about an hour, but I'll wait till next time.
Thanks.
No, I don't have anything to contribute, except that I think that the Planning Commission training idea is a good one.
It gets deep in there fast, doesn't it?
Yes.
All right. Any other communication from committees or boards or town council?
Not for me.
Nope.
Harry, anything coming down? Oh, I'll mention just quickly. We were not getting emails from the health department when they made changes as to what we were supposed to do. And I called, and we are now getting emails from the health department because we were learning some things just if we happened to catch it on local news, which was not happy about.
Well, since the head of the health department is a resident, you would think we would have been high on his list.
We were, and he had actually rattled the chain about that a month or two ago, and it hadn't gotten changed. But when I called and complained again, he complained again, and so they fixed that. So
Good.
all right.
Good.
Anything else coming down, Harry? We've got no new executive orders in the last day or two.
No, nothing since 35, which was on May the 7th. So nothing new.
All right. Our next meeting.
Yep, that's the one I was waiting to jump in, make sure we didn't miss. The next meeting is the 20th. That is our budget meeting. So I wanted to make sure and get council's feel for the
How we do it.
nature of that meeting. If we want that to be on site or how we want to handle that.
There's some advantages, and if the thing is, it's a public meeting, and if we have, it becomes harder if you open it up. I mean, but not many people want to come to a 8-hour budget meeting.
We could stream it.
We could stream it. We all have our books, and we can do it here. What do you guys think? Why would we need to have Adam in the room with us talking to us, or Loretta in the room with us talking to us? What advantage would we have over what we have right now?
Zoom seems to work just fine.
I'm not wearing shoes right now, and I like that. Boyd?
I'm glad that didn't go any further.
That's the truth.
We don't need.
Just so you can see, because I have multiple cameras. Oh, the camera went off. Never mind.
Oh, too bad.
I just got that one turned on now. Boyd, Harry, any issues with us doing it via Zoom?
I mean, I think there are obvious advantages to doing it in this format. There are also, I think, challenges. And that it would be a long time sitting in front of a computer, but
Well,
in the room too, so.
we need to take better advantage if we do that of using documents. I don't know if you guys have played around with documents within Zoom. You can share a particular window from your computer. For instance, if right now I wanted everyone to see the, here's the council packet. Is everybody seeing that?
Yep.
You know, there are some actual advantages to this as we're looking at budgets. And
Hey, Dan, would you switch back to that other camera view you showed us a minute ago?
is there a reason for that?
Yeah,
I can do that.
and I'm probably regret it because it's going to be smart, but we don't have all that.
Oh, well,
No.
I'll need to get your pilot's licenses between now and then.
Yeah, that's a whole different setup than I've got.
That's right.
But I mean, we can certainly do it either way. It'll just be, and I don't want to. This is about as straightforward a budget as I've ever been involved in because of the situation and concerns about revenue and everything. It is about as basic as you can get it. So doesn't mean we won't have a lot of discussion, and perhaps should, but if we were going to try to do it in this format, this would be the budget to do it with.
But do we have consensus? Is anyone against it?
Legally, there isn't a problem doing it that way. I think it's a practical consideration.
Well, that's, if no one objects, and if anyone objected, I think we should go with the person who objects, honestly.
Are our budget books available at Town Hall?
Not yet. This, a couple of the things that came up during the discussion today were things that might have influenced a few finishing touches. So I'll be getting with Carol first thing in the morning, and we'll be wrapping everything up.
Thank you.
Oops. That's one of the problems with these cameras is they go to sleep after 30 minutes. All right, so are we done? Anything else? I'd recommend if you have a moment or two, go into Zoom and start your own meeting, even if you're not inviting anybody to it, and use the share screen function and learn how to share documents. You can share your whole screen. You can share just a specific document. There's some things you can do that would make it easier. And so when we're going to have a meeting, you could have a few screens open. And of course, I'd like to have an electronic version again of the budget because I think it'd be easiest for that. Carol, do you need to know if others want that, or do you just send that to everybody?
No, usually I only send it to you.
Anybody else want it as a PDF?
I'm old. I use paper.
Same here.
Paper too.
All right. If you wanted to try, you can take your phone and have the phone act as an extra camera if you plug it in USB. And if anybody's interested, I'll send you that information on how to do that. So if you wanted to hold your phone up and switch to your phone camera as the screen, you could show us stuff and looking at documents. If you like paper, which might help, because sometimes it does help to look at the thing. All right.
Okay.
Do we hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I'll second that. We are adjourned.
Y'all have a good night.
Thanks.